Hello. Good morning. Good morning. Oh. Right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Enter the book of Job. Welcome. We are starting this journey here. Hope everybody's doing well. We're going to jump right in. But before we do, I'll say this. We are now familiar with the lack of chronology that exists in the Bible. So even within the books themselves, sometimes they jump around from the chronological order that we're used to. But this book of Job is actually one of the oldest books in the Bible as far as when it was set and also perhaps when it was written. It's very old, so you're going to get the feelings, and you may notice some similarities with like chapters of Genesis. That's around the time that it was written, and Job existed around the same time of like Abraham, so we can think of that. And how we know that is the setting, land of Uz, was far away from Israel. It was a land that existed really before Israel was developed, and then some of the adversaries or some of the enemies that are discussed exist around that time period as well. So again, kind of zooming out and taking a few steps back to this time will give us a little bit more of an understanding of what was going on. Nonetheless, I do have a quote for you guys. This is Francis Bacon once again. The remedy is worse than the disease. So we have the Lord God actually instilling a remedy upon Job. He's being tested, and the test itself is worse than anything Job could imagine. He actually becomes physically ill, and he actually has a disease. So what I'm trying to say is the emotional part of what Job is experiencing is far worse than much of the physical pain and the trauma that he's been through. Is actually working through it, right? Discovering the remedy, stripping us of our carnal selves is more painful than what he's actually feeling and going through. So keeping that in mind, and also referencing what we talked about yesterday about in order to remove our carnal selves, right, we must be planted, and we must make time to exit the seed and work our way up through the dirt and blossom and bloom. This is what's going on here. And once Job has bloomed, and once he has developed into this beautiful flower, God is honored, and he's in awe, and he's proud of his creation. He's proud of the seed, this part of himself. Now, every flora and fauna goes through different seasons. So this is more of a season of death, right? Of winter, of coming in on itself and hoping to be reborn again in the spring. So thinking of what we talked about yesterday, I know I read it, and like as I was reading it, it made sense, reading it to myself. And then as I was transcribing, it made good sense. Hey, you need to behave yourselves. You need to give them space. It's one of those days today. They're not giving little mama some space. Baby, you need to be nice to them. They're not trying to do anything to you. As I was saying, what was I saying? Just basically reset my whole brain there. Oh yeah, as I was reading it yesterday and as I was transcribing, it made sense, but not enough sense as I was like just reading it out to you guys. So hopefully, the themes will come up and it will stir up a little bit of remembrance, but I feel like I was just reading, trying my best not to make any mistakes, and I understood it less as I was watching it back. So just going to put that out there, but we'll become more familiar with that text as we move along. Let's go ahead and begin here with chapter 1 in the book of Job. We have here, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright, He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. So again, taking a look at the time frame, this gives us a sense of how people were revered and how people were honored was the amount of expenditures that they had. Okay, lots of livestock, lots of children, and with all that livestock and children, you had a lot of land. So that is how the wealth was measured. And then again, we talked a little bit about measurements. True wealth, right? True wealth, spiritual wealth cannot be measured, and it cannot be contained by units of measurement. So again, this can be argued that we do use this unit of measurement today still, and it's not wrong, because God was very happy to see Job flourish because he was a blameless and a good person. So he had no problem with letting Job spread about upon the land and enjoy life. We have here, one day angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There was no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." Satan, pause real quick, because there's a sense of cordial attitudes between the Lord and Satan. And again, that does expound upon what I was communicating to you about how it's not always this great war and fury and battle between good and evil. There's a cordial nature between the two, which proves even more that we should not fear evil. Never should we fear evil because of the hand and the amount of control that God really does have. And although Satan is rebellious, and although he causes a lot of issues, as we'll come to know, there is that allowance. He still has to have permission, if you will, from the Lord to go ahead and exercise his plans. So it's just an interesting little tidbit here. But Satan responds, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." Alright, so we're going here in stages. The Lord is allowing Satan to go ahead and bring about destruction, if you will, to Job, but he says do not destroy him, do not touch his body, right? And we've talked about the fleshy part of us. It starts as a soul and it becomes the flesh. So we're moving in stages with Job in order that he might grow and pass this test that the Lord is giving him. It's a test. Simple as that. A messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabians attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants. I am the only one who had escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put servants to the sword, and I am the only one who had escaped to tell you." And, this is 3 things happening back to back to back. And they didn't put this in here, but there was a 4th thing that came upon Job due to the fire, while all this was happening, he was off, I guess, being spared, as God had commanded. He was off being spared, but his whole family, his sons and his daughters, were drinking and celebrating in the house, and as this fire of the Lord came, the house had caved in and had killed them all, besides him and his wife. So this was the last straw, the straw that broke the camel's back, and that was the last news that Job had from these messengers. And notice too, this is like, it's all learning lessons, as terrible as it is, how when Satan attacks, right, when it's clearly Satan's attack, and we know this because this is what was discussed between him and the Lord, back to back to back to back. You ever feel like sometimes you can't catch a break and it's one bad thing after the next, often in very rapid succession? This is what this is trying to show us here. That's how you know it's an attack, a spiritual attack from the devil, okay? In that sense, there is no reason to show any fear or to be scared or to weaken yourselves, because when that comes, we can also think of it as a test. All right, God had allowed this to come about, and as terrible and as destructive as the events may seem, it's a test to go ahead and build us up and make us strong, or to, close within ourselves and become kind of like that winter flower that dies and comes back to life. So terrible, okay? In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Then the Lord said to Satan, and he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason. Skin for skin, Satan replied. A man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face. So we see, God has feeling. God has emotion. He does not like to see his people struggle. But he still is working behind the scenes to build him up and to go ahead and prove that, yes, Job really is an upright and righteous man, not coming against me for the shortcomings of earthly things, or even the destruction of earthly things. The Lord then said to Satan, very well, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life. So this is phase 2. Now the Lord is permitting destruction upon his body while sparing his life, so he's still living and able to experience the pain and destruction that is about to come upon him. Terrible, I know, but this is the questions that we were having. Why are we even given flesh to go ahead and experience is like a big test. Okay, this situation is a big test for us to remember and to come back to the Lord in all phases of adversity. We talked about the different foes that are going to be faced over and over and over again, and each and every time we better strive to pass the test and to remember who we are, where we came from, and strip ourselves away. Again, it's going to be a very common theme of our carnal nature. So we have here, so Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. So there's a little bit of time that passes between the sores, the affliction of sores. That's what breaks him, okay? Feeling the physical pain, that's what breaks him. So he stays silent for 7 days. He's going through shock because he just lost a big chunk of his wealth and his family. He's going through shock. He, of course, stripped himself physically of clothes, rubbed dirt on his head. He even shaved his head. Okay, so he was going through this emotional turmoil, and then now he has this physical depression of pain. As he was complaining and as he was whining to his wife, who's still alive, she commanded him to curse his life or even curse God. I think she was, the devil had kind of incited her and put it in her to say, Why don't you curse the Lord and get this over with? That type of language. I forget what she actually said, but you can look here in Job chapter 3, and it is there, or maybe at the end of chapter 2. So he leaves his wife. He goes on like a silent retreat, okay, for 7 days. He does not eat, he does not drink, he does not speak. And after hearing about this, his 3 friends, his neighbors, come to check on him. And finally they were just sitting with him, right? Sitting with him in his sorrow, in his distress, in his pain, being there as physical pillars of support. And then after this, right after they were just sitting there for a little bit, Job opened his mouth and he cursed not the Lord, but he cursed the day of his birth. He said, "That night may thick darkness seize it. May it not be included among the days of the year, nor be entered in any of the months. May that night be barren. May no shout of joy be heard in it. There the wickedness cease from turmoil, and there the weary are at rest." So he actually goes on a long form of monologue here, talking about how he wishes he was never born. And this reminds us of the Christmas movie. I do believe it's not Miracle on 34th Street. It's not really even a Christmas movie, but you know which one I'm talking about, when George Bailey curses the day that he was born, and without that day, the whole world was changed, right? And he had such an impact. So it's kind of that nostalgia that we're thinking of, how we should really never do this, but because of his pain, he thought his level of importance was just dropped all the way down, that it wouldn't have even mattered if he lived and he survived. But we know this for not being accurate and not being true. We know that he did have a big impact just by the flourishing of his lifestyle, of his children, of his livestock. But now that he's lost everything and he's in physical pain, he thinks, it was all a waste, right? If this was going to be his life, why did he even become a person, right? What was the point of this? So he's questioning at this time. Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied. So this is one of his friends, and he's giving him words of encouragement. He's lifting him up. Remember when we ask Al-Rafia to go ahead and lift us up when we're feeling shame? This is the role of Eliphaz during this time. He says, "Consider now who being innocent has ever perished. Where were the upright of..." Sorry, language, okay. "Consider now who, being innocent, has ever perished. Where were the upright ever destroyed? Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can even a strong man be more pure than his Maker? Yet man is born into trouble as surely as sparks fly upward. Blessed is the one whom God corrects, so do not despise the discipline of the Almighty." And he goes on and on with a long monologue. Very beautiful. If you'd like to take a full view of the Book of Job, I encourage you to read it. Again, it's very poetic and it brings up a lot of points. He ends with, "We have examined this, and it is true. So hear it and apply to yourself." So, again, gorgeous language here, right? Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Right? Can even a strong man be more pure than his Maker? So again, it's humbling. We talked about the importance of being close to God. The first step is humility, perhaps forgiveness, right? Forgiveness, humility, and then once the man is humble, right, he can actually reach his full potential and full form, becoming ever so close to God and moving nearer to him. Life comes with trouble, okay? It comes with trouble, it comes with struggle, but really it's only for a season that this trouble plagues us. Maybe the coldest season. For some it could be other seasons, but we often think of that winter season of a season of death and rebirth. So this is really what he's experiencing. He's experiencing a death of all that he knew. when it came to his ego, when it came to his family, his belongings, right? A death of everything, because he views himself as worthless. Now he is going to talk with his friends. His friends are going to lift him up. They're going to go back and forth about these feelings and these emotions that Job is experiencing, and his friends are going to be there to correct him and to let him know that trust God, okay? He has a plan. This is a test, right? Do not despise the situation. You're alive. At least you have your very life, and you are able to feel and process all of these things. As we said, sometimes the remedy is worse than the disease. So the remedy, right, is birthing new life, is becoming reborn, and going through that winter moment to be able to blossom even fuller and even more beautiful. But he almost wishes that he would have just died with everybody else. Understandable, right? This is a very painful thing. Even at this time, when a lot of crazy things were happening, it wasn't really here nor there. But we can understand how this would be very painful and seemingly unfair. Like God is playing with you, or he's just, having a game of wit with Satan. No, this is not the case. It holds a deeper meaning, and God has a far greater perspective and a far greater plan for the development of our souls, or his seeds, right? So God bless you guys. Thanks for listening. This is Job. Again, it's like 40 chapters, but we've already gone through 5. I'll just touch on kind of the main points as we move along. But have a blessed day. Happy Friday, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.